Somewhere close to you, right now, someone flicks a lighter. A little flame, a first pull, and a thin blue line of smoke curls up into the air. Maybe it's a cigarette on a cold morning outside work. Maybe it's a vape glowing in a fist in a quiet doorway. Whatever it is, it feels modern, a habit with a start date, the kind of thing our great-great-grandparents would have frowned at. So here is a simple question, and it turns out to have a much stranger answer than you'd expect. When did humans actually start smoking? Not chewing a leaf, not brewing it into a drink, pulling smoke into the lungs and breathing it back out. When did that begin? In one sense, the answer is almost absurdly old, because before you can smoke anything, you need smoke, and we have been living inside it for an astonishingly long time. In a cave called Wonderwork, in South Africa, a 2012 study, led by the archaeologist Francesco Berna, found ash and burnt bone deep underground, far past the point any wildfire could ever reach. The fires that left them were tended, on purpose, by an early human ancestor, probably Homo erectus, around 1 million years ago. 1 million years. From that first hearth onward, smoke was simply part of being human. It hung in every shelter. It soaked into hair and skin and the back of every throat. By 400,000 years ago, the point where the archaeologists Will Robrooks and Paula Villa placed the everyday habitual use of fire, keeping a flame alive, was a skill handed from parent to child, like walking or speaking. So in the most literal sense, the day we first sat down beside a fire was the day we started breathing smoke. We just didn't have a word for it yet. But that isn't really the picture in your head, is it? When someone says ancient humans smoking, your mind draws something cozier. A caveman leaned back against a rock, a pipe clamped in his teeth, a lazy gray cloud drifting over his head, as if smoking were as old as hunting, as old as us. It's a warm little image. It's also almost completely wrong. Breathing the smoke that fills a shelter is one thing, you can't help it. But choosing one particular plant, setting it alight, and drawing that smoke in because of what it does to you, that is a completely different act. And that act is far, far younger than the fire. To find out how young, we have to stop following the flames and start following the plants. Long before anyone smoked a thing, people already knew that plants were more than food. In a cave called El Cedrón in Asturias, in northern Spain, a 2012 study led by the archaeologist Karen Hardy scraped the hardened plaque off the teeth of Neanderthals who died around 50,000 years ago. Locked inside it, they found traces of yarrow and chamomile, bitter little plants with barely any calories, the kind you would never chew just to fill your stomach. Hardy's team argued the Neanderthals were using them the way we use a medicine cabinet, to settle a sour gut, to take the edge off an ache. 50,000 years ago, our closest cousins already understood that a plant could reach in and change how the body feels. They had fire, they had the knowledge that plants hold quiet power, and still, as far as we can tell, not one of them was smoking anything. Before farms, before villages, before a single written word, our cousins already carried a kind of medicine cabinet in their heads. But burning one of those plants just to breathe it in, of that we found no trace at all. Now you're probably thinking the obvious thing. Surely, somewhere in all those thousands of years, somebody threw a handful of leaves onto the fire, breathed in the sweet smoke, and liked it. And honestly, they almost certainly did. It's such a small, human step that it's hard to picture nobody ever taking it. But here is the trouble. A puff of smoke leaves nothing behind. A burnt leaf becomes ash. A plant crushed and inhaled rots away in a single season. There is no fossil of a good idea, no bone that remembers a smell. So for most of this story, we simply cannot see it. Not because it didn't happen, but because smoke keeps no records. The trail only picks up much later, when the smoking finally leaves behind something hard enough to survive. And when that trail does appear, it opens with a twist. Out on the salt flats of Utah, at a spot called the Wishbone Site, a 2021 dig, led by the archaeologist Darren Duke, turned up 4 tiny charred seeds in an ancient fireplace. Wild tobacco. They were about 12,300 years old, the oldest known sign of humans using tobacco found anywhere on Earth. That is roughly 9,000 years earlier than anyone once expected. But look closely at what those people were doing, because it's not what the word smoking makes you picture. They weren't smoking it. Scientists think they were most likely chewing the leaves, or tucking them into a cheek and sucking on them, and flicking the little seeds into the flames. 12,000 years ago, Human beings held the most famous smoking plant in the world right there in their hands and did not smoke it. And they would carry on not smoking it for thousands of years to come. The pipe takes its sweet time to arrive. The earliest solid chemical proof that anyone was truly smoking tobacco, drawing it through a stem and down into the lungs, comes far later than that. At the Flint River site in Alabama, a 2018 study found a smoking pipe with real nicotine still soaked into the clay. It is about 3,500 years old. Line those numbers up for a second. Humans had controlled fire for 1,000,000 years. They had been using tobacco for nearly 9,000, and only around 3,500 years ago do we get clear proof of someone actually lighting it and breathing it in. Smoking, the thing itself, the act we think of as ancient, turns out to be younger than the pyramids, younger than the first written words, younger even than farming, which raises a question of its own. Why so late? They had the plant, they had the fire. Putting the two together seems almost too obvious to miss, and yet for thousands of years, it seems like nobody did. But the clearest window into why people finally started opens on a bleak mountain plateau in the Pamirs, in what is now far western China. In a cemetery called Zhezangkal, dated to around 2,500 years ago, archaeologists opened the graves and found wooden braziers, little bowls cradling scorched stones. When a 2019 study led by the chemist Meng Ren tested the burnt residue inside, they found cannabis. Not the mild, wild kind, but a strain unusually rich in the chemical that gets you high. Now picture the scene, the way the researchers reconstruct it. A body is lowered into the cold, thin mountain air. Mourners press into the pit around it. Someone tips the cannabis onto the hot stones, and the smoke lifts, thick, resinous, sweet, until it fills the enclosed space, and everyone there is breathing it together. Heads go light. The sharp edges of grief soften. For a few long minutes, the line between the mourners and the person they have just lost feels thinner than the mountain air. This was not a habit. It was not a break between chores. It was a funeral. The smoke was a bridge, carrying the living a little way toward the dead. So, when did humans start smoking? The honest answer is that it is both older and younger than we imagine. Older, because we have breathed smoke since the very first fire, 1,000,000 years back. It reaches right down to our beginnings as a species. And younger, because choosing to pull a plant smoke into your body deliberately for what it does to you only surfaces a few thousand years ago. And when it does surface, it doesn't look like a habit at all. It looks like a rite. The thread runs from healing to reaching the gods, and only much later to simply killing time. Somewhere along that road, the smoke quietly lost its priests. What began as a doorway to the dead slowly became a way to fill 5 spare minutes on a cold sidewalk. The plant barely changed. What changed, across those thousands of years, was us, what we wanted from the smoke, and who we believed was listening on the other side of it. None of this is really about tobacco or cannabis or any one plant. It's about how astonishingly new the ordinary can be. The caveman with his pipe never existed. 1,000,000 years of firelight and wood smoke. 50,000 years of knowing a plant could heal. And only in the last few thousand, a pipe in Alabama, a brazier up in the mountains, did anyone learn to pull a plant smoke in on purpose. For almost the entire human story, people lived inside smoke without ever meaning to smoke at all. And on the day they finally chose to, they weren't relaxing. They were saying goodbye to someone, lifting the smoke toward a place they could not follow. Watch someone light up on a cold street corner some evening, that first cup flame, that slow gray breath, and try to see what you're really looking at. That little fire in their hand is the same fire you would have found in the mouth of a cave 1,000,000 years ago, just shrunken down to fit inside a palm.